Support for this show, Politics Done Right, comes from politicsdoneright.com, publishers of How to Make America Utopia, Take Away the Economy from Those Who Rigged It, As I See It, Class Warfare, The Only Resort to Right-Wing Doom, It's Worth It, How to Talk to Your Right-Wing Relatives, Friends, and Neighbors, and other books written by Egberto Willis. Yesterday on Ana Cabrera's report, she played a segment where Michelle Obama, former First Lady Michelle Obama, pointed out that America is not ready for a woman president. She's also asking America to be honest. They need to grow up. And, there was an analysis as far as why that is still the case for the United States. And what I found from most of the panelists is that we got the same answers that we got or that we get every single time. What I found missing was a little bit more in depth as to why supposedly the most advanced country, the country that is the most progressive to some extent, that while Pakistan could have elected a woman and many others that we'll discuss later on, that somehow the United States can't. The closest that I got to an answer was somebody who decided to be honest with the response to the core. I want you to listen to Danielle Moody. She's the host of the Danielle Moody Show on Substack. I want you to listen to how she dissects the argument that Cabrera asked her. And then I want to come in with something that includes a little bit more in depth based on our country proper and why it is the way it is. So let's listen to this and then we'll take it on the other side.
As we saw in this past election, sadly, we ain't ready. That's why I'm like, don't even look at me about running because you all are lying. You're not ready for a woman. You are not. So don't waste my time. We got a lot of growing up to do. And there's still, sadly, a lot of men who do not feel like they can be led by a woman. And we saw it.
Danielle, Michelle Obama's perception is actually backed up by numbers. 4 in 10 Americans say they know someone who would not vote for a woman president, according to American University. Why? Why do you think that is? And where do we go from here?
I think that we have to understand that we have deep-seated misogyny inside of this country, right? That there are things that we have seen, whether it was in the 2016 election, 2024, that America does not see women in roles of power and leadership. They elected Donald Trump twice, which shows you that against very qualified, capable women, Hillary Clinton and Kamala Harris, America chose Donald Trump. And so if we don't deal with the deep-seated misogyny that this country, frankly, was built on, including racism, those are the two things that Kamala Harris had to overcome in 107 days. And so those are real issues that we actually have to deal with and not just pretend they don't exist.
In the first campaign, it was very clear that when I got really effective on the campaign trail and started attracting huge crowds and big rallies, sometimes bigger than the candidates that we were battling, and this happened in the Democratic primary. Let me be clear. These were our people who were going after me because this started when we were running against our party. The beginning of turning me into an angry shrew who diminished her husband, who didn't love her country, who was unpatriotic. I understood that and knew that I had to quickly define myself so quickly. I was like, if I let them define me, I won't even recognize myself.
Danielle, your reaction to that. And is there anything there that women of color can take away from what we just heard?
I mean, it's the truth. And what she was, using was a quote from Audre Lorde, which says, if I don't define myself for myself, I allow myself to be crushed into other people's perceptions of me. And I think that is particularly true for women of color in positions of leadership. And it's, again, I say that we need to avail ourselves of this idea that America doesn't have a lot of work to do, right? It has a lot of work to do when we're talking about misogyny. It has a lot of work to do when we're talking about race and racism. And we can't pretend that these things are not factors in the decisions that people make with regard to who they want to lead them. And so when we are now seeing a time when we're seeing gender studies be erased from universities, when we're seeing conversations of race and racism be, erased from universities, erased from K through 12 education, there's no wonder why we're seeing a backsliding. It is all a part of a coordinated effort to ensure that women and people of color are not able to advance and that they are put back into their place, into a box that they stay in. And so we have to understand these issues as connected, and they're not just siloed events. They're not just siloed issues. They're part of a larger push to ensure that women and people of color do not advance beyond their station.
Now, let me first tell you, we have seen what would be called first world countries elect women, second world countries elect women, third world countries elect women. Let me just give you a few examples. Argentina, Cristina Fernandez Kirchner elected Australia. Julia Gillard elected Bangladesh. Sheikh Hasina elected Barbados. And this is now the Caribbean. We have Mia Amor Motley. Belgium, we had Sophia Wilms. We go to Brazil. We have Dilma Rousseff, president of a big country, big financial powerhouse, Brazil. Chile as well, Michelle Bachelet. We have Costa Rica, little country, but democracy, Laura Chinchilla. We got Croatia, Colinda Cabral. We have Dominica, Sylvania Burton. We could go to places as far as Greece, Katerina Sakelpopoli. We can go to Honduras, Central America, my part of the world, Xiomara Castro. We can go to Iceland, Catherine, and I can't pronounce the last name. India has elected several women. You remember, it started from way before we ever thought of electing a woman. So we have Latvia, Lithuania, Marshall Islands, Mauritius. Mexico is currently run by a powerful woman, Claudia Sheinbaum, Moldova, Nepal, New Zealand. I am in love with Jacinda Ardern, the way she handled the massacre in, I think it was Falls Church, the way she handled COVID, the way she showed her vulnerability and showed why women make such powerful leaders, because vulnerability they use as a tool while men use testosterone as their tool. Completely different outcomes. And we could see that with the countries led by women versus the countries led by men, following the tenets of Donald Trump and other testosterone-filled men. I mean, I don't say this to be anti-sexist against men or anything like that. It is just because of a patriarchy that, in fact, Moody spoke about, that we have to look that causes that behavior, and what we as a country need to change. Now, these other countries, were they are not completely in control, let's say, of the whole economic system of the world as we are. They have that seems to be an easier cliff to go over. But let me tell you the sad reality about the United States. The sad reality about the United States is to maintain a system, a capitalist system that we have that doesn't, that has to be run without a soul, right? That has to be run in a manner to save itself in as much as it harms. It is very hard. There are a lot of forces from the Powell memo that did a whole lot of indoctrination, creation of the Powell, the creation of the Heritage Foundation, the Cato Institutes, and all of these to maintain a certain status quo to keep that engine running. You see, whenever, if we were to get, and this is my opinion, if we were to get a woman elected in America governing as a woman, not a woman in America trying to govern as a man, but a woman in America governing as a woman, one of the first things that they'll likely ask is, how humane is our economic system? What changes do we need to make to our economic systems that would make life better for children, that would make life better for all, without thinking about Darwin's theory? I mean, there are so many things that are intrinsic to the way we were reared, the separation between women and men, that I think is so necessary. I ask all of you to do an exercise and line up, as I did, the countries that have been, and I'm talking about first world, second world, third world countries that have been run by women, and watch the changes that have occurred, whether they eventually failed. When we look at Kirchner in Argentina, how the right wing clamped down on her again, because the Chicago boys from the right wing capitalists, etc., came down on her indirectly. But if you look at the way they govern for society, you will find that humanity came first. And when we can break that machismo, patriarchy, white supremacist strain in the United States that we have right now, that is when we'll see a true election of a woman. Now, I have a quick caveat. People would say, well, when Hillary Clinton ran, she actually won the majority of the vote. And that's a caveat I think should be pointed out. The real answer there is we're almost there. We backslid since Hillary, but we're almost there. When we make that transition, which I think it better be soon, I think that is one of the ways we actually save the country. I know it sounds like hyperbole, but I mean that from Kingdom Come. Listen to the way women versus men campaign and the values that they push versus men, and you'll understand what I'm saying. Of course, you could get a man that has been trained well into bringing out the attributes that make what I think make women better leaders. Welcome to another edition of Politics Done Right. I'm Egberto Willis, your host. Today, we're honored to have the one and only Texas Congressman Al Green. In the crucible of Texas politics, Congressman Al Green stands as a veteran advocate for civil rights, federal accountability, and working class interests whose career has spanned 2 decades. From his first election to the U.S. House of Representatives in 2004 through his current campaign for Texas's 18th congressional district, Green's trajectory reflects both the resilience and the strategic challenges facing progressive Democrats confronting GOP-driven redistricting in the Lone Star State. Rooted in Houston's African-American community and beyond, and steeped in a legacy of social justice, Green's work in Congress has blended legislative activism with moral urgency, from housing equity to confronting presidential misconduct. Welcome to Politics Done Right, Congressman. How are you doing today?
As I've indicated many times, better than I deserve. I have been granted the gift of life, the most precious gift in all of the universe, and I didn't earn it. So I'm grateful, and I'm going to try to do the best that I can with it.
Well, I try not to disagree with Congress people, but I must disagree with you. I think you have quite earned it since from not only what you're doing in Congress, what you did before Congress as well, as you were always one of the pillars of the community. So I would say you've quite earned it, sir.
Well, thank you for being so kind. I come from a Christian faith wherein we believe in something called grace. And what I have with life is something called grace, something that you just can't explain, but you have to be grateful, and you ought to do your best to make sure that you use it not just for yourself, but for others as well. So I've been blessed, and I promise you that you and I, as we will with others, will work together to make the world a better place.
You know, I still remember you confronting the president in the halls of Congress, something that at the time, few politicians, let alone few Democrats, were doing.
Mr. Green, take your seat. Take your seat, sir. Take your seat. Finding that members continue to engage in willful and concerted disruption of proper decorum, the chair now directs the Sergeant at Arms to restore order Remove this gentleman from the chamber. Members are directed to uphold and maintain decorum in the House.
I have to say that that day made us all proud. It brought not just the working spirit, but the fighting spirit, which is what we expect out of you going forward.
Well, thank you very much. That was one of those occasions when spontaneity and probably my history, my life experiences, my lived experiences, they came into play. I was there at the joint session of Congress. My intentionality was to simply stand and walk out as the president was speaking. But as I was collecting my portable items, my coat, it was a very cold night, and my cane, the president talked about his mandate. And I just could not resist telling him that he did not have a mandate to cut Medicaid. And of course, my colleagues across the aisle, they became very loud and boisterous, and they tried to drown me out. So then I stood and said to him, you don't have a mandate to cut Medicaid, Medicare, or Social Security. Of course, the speaker did not agree with my commentary and the way that I presented myself, and I was escorted out of Congress. I'm the only person ever to be evicted from a joint session of Congress. And then I was censured for my commentary and my behavior. And I've said to people, it was spontaneity, it was not planned. But if I had a chance to plan it and do it again, I would. And it would not be with spontaneity, because I now realize the necessity for us to resist, and to resist in forums where others can know that we are resisting, not resist quietly with, just say, a letter. Resist where people will know that someone is fighting and trying to make a difference when we have very few tools to fight with. We don't have a lot. So when we have these opportunities, I think we have to take advantage of them. And I'm just appreciative that people have understood that I was censured but not silenced. And people have stood with me. When we were in the well, I was there to be censured. You have to stand in the well and your colleagues are there, and then they read this statement of censorship. Well, I'm standing there. My colleagues came into the well with me, the Honorable Maxine Waters, and we sang "We Shall Overcome" as the censure statement was being read. So it's important for people to stand with you, and I'm so grateful that they did. I promise you, we will continue to resist, and we will use the tools that we have, which includes impeachment. We cannot overlook that tool, especially when you have a president who should be impeached, who makes threats against members of Congress, who threatens judges, who is tampering with the independence of the judiciary, who would have us believe that if you tell members of the armed forces that they should not follow illegal orders, somehow they ought to be hanged. Now, if this isn't impeachable, what is? So I believe you have to use these tools.
Not to speak about using our military in the Caribbean Sea off of Venezuela with the potential of establishing a war, something that will be completely and entirely illegal. And I hope the Congress will do their job on that. With regards to your censure, it's interesting because I imagine a lot of the people, including many in red states right now, would take that back now as they realize that they were had by the people they voted for. As now in January, many will find that they either lose their insurance, can't afford their insurance, and even those not on the ACA will realize that their insurance rates are going up because specifically of what you got censured for.
You are eminently correct. Eminently. This is the exemplar of what I was calling to the attention of the public at that time. And by the way, it became a battle cry for us to talk about how Medicaid was not to be cut. And we've cut almost $1 trillion out of this healthcare program that benefits more than poor people, by the way. If you live long enough, you're likely to need Medicaid because long-term health care, you get that with Medicare and Medicaid. So you're going to need it. And yes, this is something that we are now having a battle with the Republicans. And I have to say the Republicans because the Democrats want to make sure that we maintain the coverage that we have for people who are in need of the coverage. But in January, if they don't do something highly unusual, which means they would have to call us back to Congress and we would have to make some decisions about this that would help people with their premiums. If we don't do this, then people are going to be angry. And many people have already expressed the fact that they made a mistake when they put this man in charge of our country. He is unfit to be president. I don't enjoy saying this. I take no great delight in saying it, but he's just unfit to do this job. And he cares about making money more than he cares about making the lives of people better who are dependent upon the government for certain things. Healthcare is one of these things. I'm a guy who believes in universal healthcare, a single payer plan. I believe in Medicare for all, but more appropriately put, medical care for all. I believe in medical care for all. Medicare for all has some gaps in it that I'd like to fix. And I would call that medical care for all. So I'm with you entirely. And I do agree that there are people who are having a buyer's remorse. And well, they should, because what they bought was something that they did not realize they were paying for.
Now, you jumped the gun on me on the question on Medicare for all, but we'll get back to that. Thank you for pointing that out. However, let me tell you something. I think, Congressman, there is most people have been concentrating on the $1 trillion loss in Medicaid, et cetera. But what they forget is that there are past congressional laws that were passed that because the deficit will be so elevated that even Medicare will be cut by up to $500 billion as well. And that isn't quite articulated sufficiently, in my opinion, to let people know how devastating this bill actually is.
Well, this big, ugly steal is what I call it. Not a big, beautiful bill, but a big, ugly steal, because they stole from Medicaid and lined the pockets of billionaires, people who are very wealthy. It seems that we have this attitude of the poor can do more with less, but the very wealthy need more to do more. More with less if you're poor. Very wealthy, you need more so that you can do more. So we line their pockets. And in so doing, we have now put Medicare at risk. Medicare may be found to be less than efficacious, because if you don't have the money to cover the needs of people, then you're not as effective as you could be with the healthcare program. And that's where we are headed with Medicare. But it also has just impacted things in general in this country. That money that we gave to the very wealthy is money that could have been spent on schools and education. It's money that could be spent on housing. We have a housing shortage in this country. We need to do more to make sure that people can get that first home. First-time home buyers are having great difficulty now. The big corporations are buying up large tracts of homes, and then they jack up the price once they get them. You can't rent them at the price that you might normally do so, because they own all of them and they can set the prices. So there are other things that have been hurt as a result of that big, ugly steal that they imposed upon the American people. And affordability is an issue. We all agree that affordability is an issue. But I'm going to mention one other thing that is rarely mentioned, but it's a fact of life if you are a person of color in the United States of America. And by the way, I don't hate the country. I believe in what the Constitution says. I think the Declaration of Independence speaks well. But the truth is, we still have racism. And we have reached a point in our country where we want to eliminate anti-Semitism, and I'm among those who want to. I'm going to fight anti-Semitism wherever I see it. But we want to manage racism. We still deal with racism if we are people of color in this country. I was the chairperson of the subcommittee on oversight and investigation for the Financial Services Committee under the leadership of the Honorable Maxine Waters. We provided the empirical evidence to show that if you're a person of color, you can walk into a bank and you can be eminently qualified, and a less qualified person who is Anglo, we say white in this country, I don't really like the term, so I say Anglo. If you're Anglo and you're less qualified, you can get more money on better terms than a well-qualified person of color. That happens in this country to this very day. We introduced legislation to deal with that. The legislation would penalize you criminally if you deny a person a loan that person is qualified for. Currently, the law is such that if you defraud the bank can file criminal charges against you, and you can go to prison and pay a fine. But if the bank defrauds you of a loan that can give you the same future that is giving other people, there's no such criminal penalty. Well, we passed a law to change that. My point is, as I digressed, is this. There were many things that could have been done with the money that we line the pockets of the very wealthy with. The very wealthy are doing well. I think that we have to care about those who are well off, well-heeled, and among the well-to-do. But also you have to care about the least, the last, and the lost. Persons who don't have the same opportunities as others. And whether we like it or not, America's about opportunities and who gets them and who can take advantage of it. So we have to make sure that opportunities are equally distributed among all of the masses.
Let me just tell you that what you just spoke about, the bank isn't just something out of the air. It actually happened to me. I can tell you, my friend, that as a business owner, I had to build my business on the 21% credit card debt because I couldn't get the 6 and 7% debt a friend of mine, less qualified, actually got. So this isn't implicit. This is real, what you just spoke about. So I can tell that offhand. Now, you also mentioned about Medicare getting affected. I want folks to realize that there is a policy within Congress known as sequestration, which will kick in and cause the Medicare decline with this new budget that has passed. But Congressman, I want to get into District 18 and you running for District 18. Right now, we have two young candidates that are going to be running in District 18. Your district has been cannibalized by the new redistricting done by the Republican Congress. So in effect, they have created it such that they created a platform such that you will be contesting 18 with two new candidates that are going to be running. What's your thoughts on that?
First thought is I want everybody to run who's qualified to run. And to be qualified, the Constitution talks about 25 years of age or older. So I want them to run. I don't want to bar anybody from running for Congress. I have found myself in a position where people assume that I have moved into the 18th Congressional District to run. Not true. The 18th Congressional District moved to me. My house was drawn into the 18th Congressional District. But not only did it draw my house in, but it drew in the homes of about 500,000 of my constituents. So the 18th Congressional District, as it is styled, as it is called, as it is labeled, is really more 9, which is what I currently represent, than 18. So I have not done anything that I wouldn't do ordinarily. Run from where my home is to represent the people I have been representing. That's all I'm doing. And that's what I plan to do, and I will continue to do that.
Well, Congressman, with all the things that I do, I didn't quite know that. I didn't quite know that 500,000 of the 700-something thousand constituencies within that district was actually yours from the 9th. I didn't quite realize that.
Yes, sir. Here's what happened. The lines were moved such that I am now in the 18th. They moved the number 9 over to the east of where I currently reside. And they made number 9 a district that is more Republican leaning than I could possibly imagine. It really is. Only less than 5% is what the current number 9 is in this new 9. Less than 5% of it. Most of the new 9 is now in what we're calling the 18th, which is where my home is, which is where I will be voting. I will be voting for myself. If I moved over to this new 9 that they've created, I couldn't vote for myself. Why would I run from a district where I can't support myself, where I can't vote for myself? So I'm running from this new 18. There will be an old 18, and there will be someone representing that district in Congress until the end of the unexpired term that the Honorable Sylvester Turner had. That term ends in January of 2027, around January the 3rd or thereabout. So when it ends, then the new 18 that I'm running for will begin. Now, there's nothing that prevents people from running for the old 18 and the new 18. So we have some of that taking place. And I encourage people to run. People are making a big to-do of my age. It seems that they just can't believe that I'm 78 years old. You know, I maybe I don't look it, but I am. I'm 78. I say this with a degree of humor because they keep publishing. Every time they publish my name, they publish the fact that I'm 78 years old. Well, you know, there are some people in Congress who've been there a lot longer who are still working effectively. I think that we should judge people based upon their output, not their years of being on the planet. How long you live is a wonderful thing, but the service that you give is more important. And I believe that anybody who is over 25 should run. And I'm seeking the vote of all people. Anybody that can vote, I want you. Now, there are some people who are just going after a certain age group. I leave that to them. I want the support of everybody because I'm going to serve everybody. And finally, on this point, this is salient. People are blaming now my two friends, Jackson Lee and Sylvester Turner. They're saying that they should have resigned. They shouldn't have had what I will call an untimely demise in terms of their work being done. That they should have resigned so that we wouldn't have this problem that we're having now of someone having to replace them in Congress. Well, there are 2 points to be made on this. The first is, it's the governor that did this. They didn't create this problem. We have people who pass while in Congress, and we don't have this elongated period of time for the replacement to be put in place. We don't have it. It's the governor of the state of Texas. His name is Abbott. It's Governor Abbott that keeps pushing the lines back and he's doing this so that President Trump can have greater influence with the House of Representatives because the margins are very tight. So they don't want any more representation from our side, meaning the side of Democrats. They don't want any more. And as a result, the governor's doing this. That's the first point. So the governor would do it regardless as to your age. And the final point is this. No one knows for whom the bell will toll next. No one. You cannot prognosticate and say that the bell is going to toll for this person, but not for that person. No one. There are many people who are in the best of health who have not awakened this morning. In the best of health. One car accident. You never know for whom the bell will toll next. I'm not running a death campaign based upon someone having to expire for me to somehow get elected. That's not the way I was reared. I was reared to respect people who have institutional knowledge. If you think that you're going to come to Congress and assume a position up on the upper part of the dais with Maxine Waters as the chairperson of financial services, you are wrong. You're going to be there at least 10 years before you get to that point. There is something called seniority. Seniority is blessed with something called institutional knowledge. If you want to eliminate institutional knowledge, you will have neophytes who will do well, I'm sure, but they will do well as neophytes. They won't do well as persons who have the benefit of the institutional knowledge necessary to maneuver certain things because of the relationships that have been established.
Well, Congressman, I think you have put that to rest. You have definitely put that to rest on two terms. First, I didn't realize that the district absorbed you, number one, and number two, good point. Nobody know who's going to be called. Let's remember our good friend Bernie Sanders, right? So,
look, Trump himself is he's
no. You don't want to use Trump as an example. Please don't use Trump as an example. But let's get further. Let me just say this: some kudos to you, my brother, and it goes as follows.
Thank you.
Without asking you, one of the most important tenets policies that we need here in the United States of America is Medicare, meaning medical care for all. And you came out straight and you didn't whip about it. And you said that's what you want. What I've been talking to all constituencies about is anybody who doesn't support somebody who full-throatedly come out and say the only viable policy in this country now is Medicare for all, or in your parlance, medical care for all. It's not worth giving a chance in Congress. Punto y final. Point taken. Now, go ahead.
May I add one thing to that, please? And I appreciate your saying it. John Conyers introduced.
Love him. Yes.
John Conyers, 2 years before I arrived in Congress, Medicare for all.
676, I believe.
When I arrived in Congress in 2005, I have been voting for Medicare for all and co-sponsoring this legislation. Jayapal took it over when Conyers resigned, and I've been co-sponsoring it with her as well. It is the only way we can make sure that healthcare doesn't become wealth care. Wealth care, where the very rich and members of Congress, I might add, have some of the best healthcare in the world. But if you're not among these two classes, and there are some others, then you're not likely to get it. In this country, if you are a bank robber and we should wound you on the way out as you're robbing the bank and we capture you, we're going to give you aid and comfort. If you're in the military and we strike you, we're having a big battle now about people who were hit by drones out in the ocean. And we had a second strike on them. There's a big battle now about why didn't we stop that and give them aid and comfort out in the middle of the ocean. That's what we do. That's who we are. So if we can give aid and comfort to the bank robber, aid and comfort to the person who is in mortal combat with us, then surely we can give aid and comfort to hard-working people in this country who only want to do what they can to take care of themselves, their families, and just build a better life, which means you're going to have a better life for people in the country. That's what this medical care is all about. It is aid and comfort for people, regardless as to your station in life. It's a right. It is not something that is a privilege for the very wealthy. We cannot allow healthcare to be wealth care in the richest country in the world.
You know, Congressman, I think this is an opportunity, especially given the fraud on America that we had with the big bad bill, for us to go into the rural areas, for us to go into every part of the world, every part of America that will be hit real hard, for them to actually see who's at fault. Now, we're coming close to our time, so I have some rapid things I want to ask you, because I really want to hear your thoughts on this. Will you be one who would try to get the Senate? I know you're not in the Senate, you're in the Congress, but convince your colleagues to get rid of the filibuster.
Absolutely. Look, the filibuster is the reason a man was able to fight civil rights legislation, anti-lynching legislation. The filibuster is something that has been used more to harm us than to help us. When we had a chance to pass John Lewis voting rights, we couldn't do it because of two senators, Manchin and Sinema.
Right.
They stood in the way of our having the opportunity to carve out an exception for civil rights laws, for what John Lewis fought for at the Edmund Pettus Bridge on Bloody Sunday. Yes, we need to get rid of it. And I would also say this to you. There's a man named Richard Russell. He was a self-proclaimed white supremacist. The Russell Senate office building is named after him. Richard Russell used that filibuster to keep us from acquiring our human rights, civil rights, much earlier in our lives in this country, because he was able to block things using the filibuster. So it has outlived its purpose. And quite frankly, it has not had a noble purpose at all. It's been an ignoble piece of legislation that ought to be abandoned.
From its genesis, actually. From its genesis, it was done. Right. Now, on another subject, right now we have 9 people who have ultimate power to control our lives. Even if Congress, if a Democratic Congress and a Democratic president affirms a law, we have a rogue Supreme Court that could simply say that law is unconstitutional, and no matter what progressive values you want to institute in America, they can put it down. Are you one who would try to democratize the Supreme Court?
I think that the Supreme Court very unfortunately, has become a tool of the executive branch. Very, very unfortunate that this has occurred. We have seen how this president has dealt with due process of the law to the extent that you would take a person who is accused of something, and you take this person and you send them to some distant place, another country, and you have judges saying, hey, you can't do that. You've got to give this man a chance to raise his hand and say, oh, wait a minute, you got the wrong guy. No, you don't get a chance. That's what due process is about. Being able to say, hey, wait a minute, I'm not the person. You got the wrong person for whatever reasons. This president doesn't respect due process of the law. He doesn't respect the independence of the judiciary. When the judiciary rules against him, he calls the judges lunatics. This is a person who is unfit to be president. And the Supreme Court is aiding and abetting what he is doing. So yes, I want to make sure that we have a Supreme Court that understands that you should not allow the fact that a president said he was going to put you on the court to do a certain thing for you to be guided by that. He put people on the court to eliminate Roe v. Wade. He put them there, and they've done it. I am not sure that this court, dear brother, please forgive me for having to say this to you, and I beg others will forgive me for having to hear this. But I'm not sure that this court could pass Brown versus Board of Education.
It could.
I'm not sure.
No doubt.
That this court would say that separate but equal is unconstitutional. And I'm not sure that in my lifetime and your lifetime, we won't have a case before the court where someone is saying, I don't have to serve people that I don't want to serve in my business. And that's what Brown was about. So you can't decide that you're going to just exclude people because of their color. You can't deny them housing because of their color. You can't deny them access to places in your business and opportunities. You can't do it. That's what the boycott was about in Montgomery, Alabama. So I'm saying to you, this Supreme Court is a Supreme Court that clearly has been put in the hands of the president, who has demonstrated that he does not consider constitutional rights primary. They're either secondary, tertiary, or quaternary, but they're not primary in his world.
We're sort of up for time, Congressman. So let me ask you the last question I always ask, and that is, what would you have liked me to ask you that I've denied asking you?
Well, I must compliment you. You've been very thorough. So you hit the very important questions. I would like to just give you a closing thought, maybe. And here's my closing thought. If we don't understand what Dr. King fought for, what John Lewis fought for, what Rosa Parks went to jail for, what Dr. King literally died for, which was our rights, our constitutional rights, our right to not allow racism to determine our destiny. We must learn to say racism again. We must not be afraid to say that this is racist when we see it. We have to challenge it as such. And Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act that is now under assault, it's all about racism and protecting us from racism when it comes to voting and getting elected to office. And if we can't say racism and talk about how it still exists, John Lewis and what they did at the Edmund Pettus Bridge is going to become but a memory. It won't become a part of our everyday lives in terms of protecting us against racism. I thank you for the opportunity to be with you. You have been more than thorough, and I want to let your audience know that you have someone here who's willing to speak truth to power. But more important than speaking truth to power, dear brother, is speaking truth about power. You speak truth to power, you say, power, there's a problem. Let's solve it. But when you speak truth about power, you say, power, there's a problem, and you're it. Power is the problem.
The Honorable Texas Congressman Al Green, thank you so kindly for having been on Politics Done Right.
Thank you, brother.
America is, if you recall a few days ago, maybe a week and a half or so ago, I said how thankful I was for Thanksgiving, not for the myth, but for a lot of good things. One of it was my daughter recovering from her stroke and working, starting to work, etc. It just made me feel that is something to be very thankful about. I was also thankful for having the PDR posse, having a whole lot of great folks that I spend at least 5 days a week with doing 2 one-hour shows with. Thankful for that. I'm thankful for the audience. I'm thankful to be able to talk to everybody and do these things. But the one other major thing that I was thankful for is that America is starting to wake up. America is starting to see Donald Trump for the fraud that he is. America is starting to see those who follow Donald Trump as either the gullible, the weak, the feeble-minded, or otherwise. And as such, they're staying away from them. And it is important because to recover this country will require us doing 2 things. Energizing our base. But other than energizing our base, making sure that those who were gullible enough to follow the MAGA movement, the right movement, welcome them back, but make sure that they atone. And for the criminals that became part of ICE, for the criminals that became part of those harassing Americans, to make sure that we apply a scarlet letter to them and make them unemployable when this regime has been taken down. That is where we must get to. We must make sure that everybody realizes that when you put a hurting on America, like these thugs in ICE have, that this administration has, there must be a price to pay unless you atone from the heart. That said, I want to show you what's happening in America and tell you our job is not done, but it has begun. Our job is not done, but it is in full force. And 2026 will begin the mass recovery. And 2028, of course, will be the conclusion of the beginning of the recovery. But listen to this and then we'll take it on the other side.
I've said it before. The Hispanic vote is not guaranteed. Hispanics married President Trump. They're only dating the GOP. I've been warning it. If the GOP does not deliver, we will lose the Hispanic vote all over the country. And unfortunately, it happened last night. In New Jersey and Virginia, Hispanics moved back more than 25 points to the Democratic Party. 25 points. Let's be clear. In Virginia and New Jersey, the GOP would have had a much better chance of winning if the Hispanics vote would have stuck with the GOP. When we show up, we win. When we forget them, we lose.
That was Florida Congresswoman Maria Elvira Salazar, and that was her warning after the November 5th elections last month when Republicans were trounced from Virginia to New Jersey. So you can only imagine what she's thinking today after a Democrat, Eileen Higgins, became the first Democrat in nearly 30 years to become the mayor of Miami. How did that happen? Well, it turns out the Congresswoman accurately predicted the problem, which showed up last night in her own district. Republicans thought Hispanics married them, and Hispanics said, we want to date around. Mayor-elect Higgins offered the heavily Hispanic community affordability, less corruption, and compassionate immigration policies. And voters out there, well, they said yes by 19 points.
Want a strong border. We want a path to citizenship. We don't want law-abiding people to be ejected from our country, impoverishing their family and driving our economy into ruin.
We saw the same swing in heavily Hispanic areas of New Jersey as well, but it is not just one demographic here. Democrats have a 14-point enthusiasm gap on the generic ballot, which has yielded them surprising results all over the country, including another race in Georgia last night where Democrat Eric Gissler pulled off an upset victory in a historically Republican state house district. And even in the places where the Dems are losing, they're still gaining enough to seriously worry the GOP. Take last week's result in Tennessee 7. Democrat Afton Bain lost to Republican Matt Van Epps, but she only lost by 9 points. That is a major swing in a district that went to Donald Trump by 22 points in 2024, just a year ago. New York Times columnist David French says that swing is extremely significant, and he argues it is revealing the culture clash amid the factions that make up Donald Trump's Republican Party. The depth of these Republican divisions has been obscured by two things: shared affection for Trump and shared revulsion at the left. But Trump is no longer on the ballot. and there is increased alarm over the new right. Those two factors are working together to shrink the Republican tent. And in the 7th district, we watch that tent shrink right in the middle of the Republican heartland. But, as French also warns, if the internal Republican clashes are helping to push people out of the party, it's still incumbent on Democrats to try to pull wavering Republicans and swing voters in. Larry, I'm so happy you said yes to joining us today because I want to start with you. What happened in Miami?
Well, what happened in Miami is the Democrats had a superior candidate, but much more important than that, we're seeing in Miami, in Georgia, in Virginia, New Jersey, all across the country, a reaction to Donald Trump's failures. And his failures are mainly in policy terms. That's what people are responding to. But believe it or not, at last, fissures are appearing even in the Republican coalition, and Republicans finally, at least in some cases, are expressing themselves. And there is real repulsion, just repulsion at the sorts of things that Donald Trump is saying and doing, as with that sickening, disgusting speech in Pennsylvania last night.
What was so bad about it, Larry?
Oh, God, how much time do you have? No, it's an hour, but it's a short show, and he spoke for a long time. The constant personal attacks, the nastiness, the viciousness. Yes, we've seen this all along, but he's getting worse. I mean, if it is humanly possible, he is getting worse. The lying is also increasing, doubling, tripling, quadrupling. I mean, he lies as often as he breathes. I saw something that really shocked me today, and I'm too old to get shocked by anything. But Pew Research Center came out with something they've had for many, many years, annually or more frequently than annually, trust in government. During Eisenhower and Kennedy, 80% of the American public trusted their government to do what was right all or most of the time. 80%. We've just reached an all-time low under Trump 2.0. 17%. 17% of Americans trust the government all or most of the time to do what's right.
And that is a shame. That is a shame. Only 17% trust the government. You know, again, when you don't know to run government, when you do that, that is exactly what happens. But let me tell you something that nobody said in that report. And I want all of you to listen to this and listen to this with fervor. And it goes like this, folks. Donald Trump told Texas that they must redistrict to create 5 more seats. Okay? Donald Trump told, and by the way, California counteracted by making districts some Republican districts a bit more Democratic. All right. Florida is thinking about doing the same. I believe Indiana is thinking about doing the same, though they can't come to some conclusion. And other places are doing it. Let's talk a little bit about gerrymandering and what this story that I just played have to do with it. If you notice, we have a leftward shift in the electorate. So therefore, the way Republicans thought they were going to be able to save the House was to say, if a district is plus 10, let's make the district plus 7 so that we can take a few Republicans out of those districts to make another district more Republican. So let's say you had a plus 2 Democratic district. What you do now is you take 3% out of the Republican areas and make that a plus 2 or 3 Republican district. But here is what that means. To make that other district a plus 3 Republican district, you had to reduce the Republican district that maybe was plus 12 down to plus 9 or even lower, let's say plus 5, plus 8. Now, here is what these clowns did, not realizing that the margins were flipping to the left and that these margins made a lot of those sure Republican districts less sure. They have made them even less sure. So whereas they thought they were going to get a plus 5 in Texas, an extra 5 districts, there is a possibility that they will lose all 5 of those districts they thought they would have gained and put other Republican districts in play. Because if you get a 12-point shift, a 13-point shift, like you got in another southern state, Tennessee, you have wiped out quite a few Republican districts. While many are seeing a plus 30, meaning a 30 district turnaround, a 30 congressperson turnaround in 2026, here is the kicker, folks. I think the gerrymandering that they've done could turn that plus 30 that Democrats would gain in 26 into a potential plus 60. And don't think plus 60 is not possible. Under Obama 2010, I believe it was, and didn't verify this for me, I believe there was a net plus 60 for Republicans under Obama. It is possible. And under Obama, things were getting better. Remember, he came in after Bush cratered the economy, and we were on the steady rise with Obama. Here with Donald Trump, we are on the way down. So as that report pointed out, Americans are changing their voting mechanism or their voting propensity right now. And that is now biased towards Democrats. Expect a huge turnaround. And guess what? Voter suppression will actually get suppressed because of the volumes that we're talking about. You look at what happened in California. In a offbeat election, they got election time voting. Latinos are going out of their minds to come out and vote because they see what's happening to their cousins. They're seeing what happens to their sisters, their brothers, their friends. Be prepared. Be prepared. And what I have to tell all of our Democrats now is you must go and pick the most progressive person you can so that when we have the election in 2026 and 2028, we actually get the policies that's going to keep us there. The social policies, the health care for all, that we get the family leave, that we get the sick leave, that we get all these policies put together. But it is up to us all. Support for this show, Politics Done Right, comes from politicsdoneright.com, publishers of How to Make America Utopia, Take Away the Economy from Those Who Rigged It, As I See It, Class Warfare, The Only Resort to Right-Wing Doom, It's Worth It, How to Talk to Your Right-Wing Relatives, Friends, and Neighbors, and other books written by Egberto Willis. Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willis. This is a progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, progressive, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. We are an independent media outlet that, unlike mainstream media beholden to corporations, we only owe allegiance to you. Remember, you can also send me a tweet at EGBERTOWILLIES. That is at Egberto Willis. Let us engage. It is Politics Done Right. Support for this show, Politics Done Right, comes from politicsdoneright.com, publishers of How to Make America Utopia, Take Away the Economy from Those Who Rigged It, As I See It, Class Warfare, The Only Resort to Right-Wing Doom, It's Worth It,